Hey, everybody. Welcome to Azure Flash News, episode 100.
100, that's right. It's finally it's November, November 18th.
It
We
is.
are publishing or producing our unofficial official 100th episode of Azure Flash News. Very excited to be here today
Yeah, we kind of redid the count a while ago, and but we're gonna call this episode 100.
because we can.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, do we still have any mugs?
We sure do.
Okay, a mug for anybody who tweets out and congratulates us on 100th episode. It's on.
It's on.
Okay. All right.
Love it.
Okay. So, and if you're watching on YouTube right now, we're streaming live there. Go ahead and hit subscribe, hit like. We appreciate that. It helps other people
Please
find the
do.
show. So, Rick, you want to go
Absolutely.
over what we're talking about today?
Oh, most certainly. We've got some new capabilities around Azure Files that I believe people have been waiting for since I'll say the induction of or the introduction of Azure Files
Yep, that's right.
as part of our storage offering.
Yep.
A really cool article by Brendan Burns, the well-known, well-respected Kubernetes guru around just developer centric kind of
Mm-hmm.
capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Then of course we've got some new features in Azure Firewall we'll talk about that are GA. A really fun series of posts or articles from Mark Russinovich, the man, the myth, the legend, regarding network reliability and stuff we do.
Otherwise known as
At
Mark Russ.
Mark Russ, that's right,
That's right.
right. And then, of course, the second to last but not least, we've got migration support for PowerShell and Azure Migrate. So,
Oh, cool.
and then
Yeah.
last but definitely not
No,
least,
hope not.
Mark is going to be doing some fun demos.
I'm gonna try a demo. It's something new. I think
I
people
love
I
it.
think people are gonna like it. So, all right, I'm gonna
Absolutely.
go and share screen here,
Yeah,
and let's get started with Azure Files multi-channel.
definitely. Yes, 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 yes. So, I think the obvious benefit here is when you skull when you go skull Vikings, the
I,
obvious
I, I
benefit
was
here
thinking of
is
oh, I was thinking of scold, as in like scold your children. Or
scold. Yeah, shame on you. Well, shame on us for doing it
yeah,
this way
that's right.
historically, right? We started out without multi-channel support for SMB,
That's right.
right? So when you're connecting to an Azure file share account or file storage account, a file share, without multi-channel support, obviously that's really going to restrict the IOs and the basically the performance specifically that you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
So in this particular case, multi-channel is really it's the optimal network path that gives you a ton of performance increase because you have these parallel paths through the system, right?
That's right.
And it's parallel processing. It's not just that you have options in your path; it's that it happens all at the same time. It's not synchronous. It's not serial, right? It's parallel.
Right.
And it's a cool way. It's so the increase is as you can see in the content here. It's bandwidth aggregation over multiple NICs, or with NIC support for RSS, receiver side scaling, which is basically I/O across CPUs and dynamic load. And I have to assume, I'm speculating, but I have to assume a lot of this has been enabled because of the fact that we use those FPGAs,
Yeah.
and we can do certain things on them that you can't necessarily do in a traditional
Right.
hardware
Right.
architecture.
Right. Right. So it's like if you were purchasing a certain VM size because of its ability to hit the network for Azure Files, this can help you maybe reduce the size of that virtual machine because now you can hit Azure Files at a much higher throughput, I/O rate.
Yep.
So it's really a great improvement if you're really
It's
trying to hit Azure
huge.
Files at high throughput. There's if you're watching on YouTube, there's some graphs, that kind of show the performance change when using one channel and four channels. So
Yeah, it's pretty significant. So that's exciting that we've got this capability. We're getting rid of these bottlenecks, and that's part of the cloud journey and evolution, right? We build these systems, we take feedback from customers, we identify, within reason, opportunities for improvement.
yep.
I'm still convinced we won't ever see multicast, but I've been wrong before.
Mm-hmm.
But so within reason, we love to do these types of things to really enhance the product, perform, and enhance the customer experience.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
Now, Rick, how much does it cost for customers to start using multi-channel premium Azure Files in addition to what
Well,
they were doing yesterday?
the answer is bupkis.
Zero.
Now, and
Zero.
not
Yep.
big bupkis from the Bears. We're
Yeah.
talking bupkis as in
Yeah,
$0.
that's right. $0. It is
Yep.
a part of the premium storage account. Um,
Correct.
so that's part of it. Premium is on the uh, not the spinning disk, not HDDs, but on you know the solid state disk SCDs or whatever you want to call
STDs.
it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and
Well, the good news is though is that we recently announced a 30 more than 33% price reduction for that premium tier.
that's right.
So we cut that cost by a third.
Yeah, that's right. So we're trying to make sure that as we grow and scale and in our operations and whatever
Yep.
all of those other things are, that we pass those savings on to you, the customer,
Absolutely.
because you know part of the cloud is getting lower costs. Although I would, as we get farther and farther along, really the cost savings is, I mean, just the raw cost of VM to VM is not really why people go to the cloud. Not really.
Hmm.
It's really more about being able to um, get the agility that you need.
Exactly.
And the agility includes not only being able to kind of get your development process to go faster, but also the agility to scale, right? So in and
Yep.
out.
Yep.
But it's not really about a VM on prem versus a VM in the cloud because, I mean, that's, yeah, you can save money, but especially when you can turn it off and save money. So
Love it.
just know that we're always trying to pass those savings on to customers like we did here in Premium Files. So if you're using Azure Files, you got to try this out. Um, and give it a shot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the performance improvements are pretty obvious. They're pretty blatant when you look at the differences between the single channel versus the four channel implementation and the parallel throughput and read writes. It's pretty significant.
I'm actually kind of looking here at what you need to do to take advantage of this, and I see here we have said to get started, you'll need to register your subscription for the preview that gets in preview
Yep.
today.
Yep.
Then you can enable or disable the multi-channel. Just turn it on or off.
Hmm.
But I'm trying to figure out, did we describe anything that the application needs to do?
I have not seen a
I
single
didn't
thing.
see anything
Basically, turn it
either.
on and let it happen,
Yeah,
because
that's
it's all based on the NIC, right?
right.
As long as that NIC on, we're basically enable the
Yeah,
RSS enablement on the network adapter.
yeah,
Otherwise, the application doesn't have to have any kind of a multi-threaded fan out type of model to
right.
support this. It's all based on the hardware and I shouldn't say hardware, the software based infrastructure to support it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I saw too. So it looks like you
Yep.
just turned it on. Okay.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to see if people are seeing the same types of improvements that we've seen in our testing.
Yeah, that's right. So let us
Cool.
know. Tweet back at us if you
Please
do.
do.
Yeah,
Yes.
tweet to Azure Flash News or at Azure. Sure, why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
So okay.
Love it.
All right.
Love it. Love it.
What's next?
Well, so next on the list, Brendan Burns, I think we've talked about him ad nauseum in some cases when we
Co-creator of
talk about
co-creator of
Kubernetes,
Kubernetes.
right? And of course, with Kubernetes comes containerization, and that's really kind of the cloud native compute foundation's emphasis is really around that aspect of cloud native. So you can't really talk about Kubernetes or cloud native without at some point mentioning Mr. Burns,
That's right.
the man, the myth, the legend,
That's
next
right.
to Mark Roos.
Mark
Roos.
Rusinovich.
Yeah. But so this is a great article talking about developer velocity and efficiency with Kubernetes, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times with Kubernetes and the orchestration specifically around it, there are components that come with it, right? So we've introduced, for example, with modern application development, there has to be certain event-driven types of capabilities. Um, one of the so if it would, I like how they're really talking about function as a service, right?
Yeah.
Because if you couple function as a service with event-driven programming, that is kind of I'm not going to say unicorn because that is very realistic, but that's kind of the goal, right? That's kind of the golden rings that people are striving for when they build these solutions. So
Yeah.
but what we're doing is we're helping enable that through concepts like Kubernetes event-driven autoscaler, so KEDA,
Yeah.
right? So, and recently KEDA, the community announced the 2.0 release with scaled objects and some other capabilities that make it even more easy to use and more compelling to use,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I don't know that this is a little bit of a summary kind of article
It
that we're
is.
kind of talking about here,
Yep.
but just know that there is so much. innovation going on in this space, so many new capabilities. Because like on Azure, you could do functions as a service on Azure if you wanted to, but this is another option. If you have a
Yep.
Kubernetes centric strategy and you want to keep the model for deploying functions in Kubernetes, you can do that. It
Yes.
takes Kata that can help you get it done, but I think it's actually required. But
Yeah.
if that's what you want to do, we want to make it possible for you. Um,
Well, I think one of the cool things that's called out here though is this isn't just a theoretical, hey, this could potentially help you, right? We are so September 15th of this year, we basically made the announcement of our Xbox capability for streaming service,
mhm.
right? So this X Cloud capability, Project X Cloud runs on Kubernetes.
How about
It's
that?
running on AKS, right? So I mean, it's really interesting that we're not just saying, hey, you can do all these cool things. We're saying, hey, let us show you what you can do. Here's something with the Xbox X Cloud where you can stream games, you can do all these different things within that construct, and we're doing it by drinking our own champagne,
Mhm.
as some folks like to refer to, instead of eat your own dog food. But this is how you do it, and so it's really cool that we are in fact leveraging those capabilities ourselves.
Yeah, that's right. So, we just want to make it possible for people to really get going with their application endeavors, get the infrastructure out of the way, get it built, and just get going.
Yeah,
So,
and don't forget, if that's your space, if that's where you like to play, KubeCon is going on. Um, in fact, there is a Ask Me Anything panel session today at 2:30 Pacific time with Microsoft engineering leads. So,
whoa,
if you haven't
2:30
connected, or if you
Pacific. So
haven't,
that's at
yep,
4:30 Central, right?
yep,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's in
So
what, 5 or
I
6 hours?
exactly. I also like the fact that they're showing companies, specifically Finxact, Mars Pet Care, Mercedes Benz. I mean, these are, again, real world scenarios. This is real deal. This is not stuff that requires pixie dust and unicorns to make things happen.
Nope. Nope, it can actually be done. So, that's exciting.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
hey, so we've got some stuff for Azure Firewall now generally available.
Yeah, so this was I think there have been folks that have been waiting for this, not only when it was in private preview, when it was in public preview, but definitely for it to go GA. Some people prefer to wait GA, and rightfully so.
Yep.
It comes with the SLAs, and it comes with some of the other support standards
It
that you
come
would expect.
it
But
also
so
comes
in
with the
this case, we're
blessing of the product group. They're kind of
exactly,
saying,
yes.
we're
Yep.
done, the features are there, it's time to go.
Absolutely. So there's some new enhanced DNS features in Azure Firewall that are GA'd. Okay, so custom DNS support is now generally available. Okay, and this is really cool because Azure Firewall historically, and I hate that we say this in the blog, but it was hard coded to use Azure DNS. Okay, so basically, custom DNS gives you the ability to use your own DNS server,
Yep,
right?
that's
While
right.
allowing outbound dependencies can still resolve in Azure DNS. So you
Right.
can configure a single DNS server or many servers that you can use for these Azure firewall policy DNS settings.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
and I hate the fact that I mean, it's almost a little embarrassing to say it was hard coded to use Azure DNS, but they probably had a requirement: get it out the door, get
Right.
it running, get it usable, and then we'll enhance it, right? So it's land and expand that feature set
Yeah.
that is required,
Yeah,
right?
sometimes and even in the thing that I'm going to demo here in a little while, it's about how do we deliver what we can deliver today and then continue to expand. And so I think people have been
Exactly.
waiting on being able to use their own custom DNS on
Yeah,
Azure Firewall, and
absolutely.
now
Yep.
it's
Well, and
available.
in addition, yep, in addition to that, you've got DNS proxy, which is now generally available as well. So basically what you can do is you can process and forward DNS queries from a virtual network to your DNS server. So you can use your own DNS server with FQDN filtering in your network. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do around the DNS capabilities. So it's not just about custom DNS support, but also leveraging the proxy, so you can actually do queries. You can do some other different things there, but it's now supported at the Azure firewall level, right?
Yeah.
So the firewall itself can process and forward these queries from your virtual network to your DNS server. So if you're not necessarily going backhauling it through like ExpressRoute, or going through it in a different direction, or if you're just hairpinning traffic to the firewall, which you should be doing, right? If it's layer 4, this will give you that capability to do DNS queries as well.
Yeah, that's right. And then, in addition to that, we have a general availability of FQDN filtering on the network rules.
Yes, yes.
So now, as far as when you are using FQDNs as a part of your network rules, that is now generally available. So, because people don't want to, they don't want to input all of the possible IP addresses
Well,
for
and that's the
firewall rules.
IP exactly, because IP addresses change, right? I
Right.
mean, there are very rare circumstances where you do have your static IP assignment. Yes, you can do that, absolutely. But in a lot of cases, especially if you have elasticity, you don't necessarily have, you may be going direct to a certain machine, or there may be certain cases where you just don't want to rely on IP addresses. And this is where FQDN makes it a lot simpler.
Yeah, that's right. So, gosh, man, even more.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And
Although, yeah, go ahead.
oh, well, just in this last piece, right? Azure Firewall as a DNS proxy to private endpoint access from on premises, right?
So,
So,
like, I'm
I
trying
mean,
to wrap my head around
obviously, we're
this
open
here.
up. Yeah, right. So we're opening up a can of worms here because we're talking about Azure Private Link, right? Which gives you the ability to use private endpoints within the context of your virtual network, right? So you can take a Microsoft PaaS service, give it a private endpoint, the equivalent of like having a virtual NIC in a subnet that you can talk to. So it's like a 10 dot whatever address, right? And it basically using Azure Firewall as a DNS proxy to enable access from on premises. So that DNS proxy, just like as mentioned above, you can make those queries to actually talk to those private endpoints through the Azure Firewall DNS proxy as opposed to with the forwarding requirement.
So, if I'm reading this right, did we just make Azure Private Link available on-prem?
It sure is what it looks like, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. Um, but you have to have that DNS back on prem, and that's kind of the one
Correct.
missing thing. But now, if we're providing this proxy for the DNS, anyway, lots of stuff going on in Azure Firewall. We
Yes.
want to continue to make this, a first class, first party, firewall solution. So if you're using Azure Firewall today, go check out the new capabilities. But
Yep.
if you're not using Azure Firewall, you really ought to check it out because there are a lot of benefits to
Absolutely.
being on Azure Firewall rather than a VM based solution. For instance, Azure Firewall is automatically load balanced. You don't have to deal with
Yep.
that. It's
High
automatically HA.
availability.
Yeah,
Yep.
you don't have to worry about doing the load balancing across two VMs. It auto scales up and down. Um, so there's a lot of really, really good reasons to go and check out Azure Firewall.
Yep. Definitely agree. Definitely agree.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
so
so here's an article from Mark Russ, right?
Yeah, so this next one I call it just because, Mark's been taking us on a journey, through a series of different posts, right? But it all comes down to he talks about different how we're achieving different types of reliability or how we're striving for different improvements in reliability across our system, right? Whether
Mm-hmm.
it's deployment of resources, performance, security. In this particular case, he's got a series of posts or blog posts around network reliability, right? So advancing global network reliability through intelligent software. And global network reliability is really it's an interesting construct, right? Because not only are you dealing with, I mean, you're not dealing at a micro level here where you've got visibility into a pretty good visibility into the flows, into the health, the status, of all the different components that go into networking. But now take that and multiply it by some crazy exponential numbers, right? Because you see, we've got over 60 regions, over 220 data centers, over 170 edge sites, and we span basically more than 165,000 miles of terrestrial and subsea fiber, right? Now
Not
manage that
not
global
not
network
165
reliability.
miles, 165K,
1,000 miles.
thousand
Yeah,
miles. I mean, that is
exactly.
just mind-boggling.
It's absolutely nuts. And when you think about the traffic that traverses that, right? The Azure, Office 365, Dynamics 365, Xbox, Bing, etc., right? This is not a trivial effort. And when you talk
No.
about trillions of requests per day and terabytes of data transferred each second, right? Reliability is absolutely critical.
Yeah, yeah. Like Mark goes on to kind of talk a little bit about kind of the different principles, the design principles. We have to have a
Yep,
redundant topology. We have to continue to de-risk changes so that we can
always.
change. Right? I mean, that's kind of like one of the tenets of IT, frankly, sometimes is to reduce the frequency of change.
Yep,
But we have to be able to continue to change and de-risk that change. We have to do a good job of managing at scale, using software systems to manage at scale, because you can't have one person per mile of fiber. We can't have that just keep scaling up. Like, we have to have a small network team that continues to manage it, whether it's 165,000 miles or
Exactly.
265,000 miles. And we need to be able to scale
Yep.
without adding more people to the team. So, we need to make sure customers get to the right part of the network at the right time. We need to continue to use AI to improve. So there's a whole lot of things that we continue to do to make the network work for customers.
Yep. It's pretty impressive what goes into it. And the fact that we've got real-time operation checking for network simulation, and the fact that we've got this concept called open network emulator, basically the software emulation of the network, right? So you think about testing and validating and doing all the things you need to do before it actually bakes and gets rolled out. We've had to get real creative and actually invent certain things to basically prove that the changes we're about to make, you know, frankly, don't blow things up. And even then, we've seen cases where we've had to roll back changes, right? There's been some issues because something's happened. So I have to assume that those tools continue to evolve in addition to the what we're doing with the other aspects of
Yeah.
these reliability pieces.
I mean, I'm just kind of, just starting to kind of consider and think about all of these things that they're doing to make sure, all of these simulations. I mean, it's just capacity plan. It's just, you stop and you realize the amount of work and effort that goes into
Oh,
what makes this stuff run. It's really just kind of mind-boggling.
oh, it really is. And here's this is a really interesting little tidbit here. It says this end-to-end system was used extensively to respond to the demand surge from COVID-19 and delivered 110 terabytes of additional backbone capability in less than 2 months.
So I'll highlight this for those of you who are watching. You'll see the highlight here. So it, it's kind of hard to express what a massive change COVID was for everyone. And it's
Oh,
been hard on a lot of people, obviously, around jobs
yeah,
and that kind of stuff. But it also changed the way we all work. And so, our goal is to be ready for those kinds of changes and to be able to, spin up the resources that companies need so that they can actually continue to run their businesses on our network, on our services, on Azure, that kind of stuff. So,
exactly. I mean, it's just crazy how things have had to evolve and the demand surge and the extra capacity and yeah, it's certainly changing how everybody works. There's no doubt about it.
yeah. That is
Yeah.
that is awesome, and then
Yeah. So an interesting read.
and there's another one. There's an additional post where Mark goes into additional
Yep.
detail. So go check that out.
Hmm.
Okay.
Definitely. Definitely. So before we jump into some really cool demo stuff, demo land, if you will, um, this is so the at-scale migration automation support, right, with Azure Migrate and Azure PowerShell. We've introduced a new version of Azure Migrate, okay, in July, so it's not brand new, but basically we were listening to people. We were trying to understand, enterprise types of migration scenarios. There were a lot of different capabilities and concerns that once we launched it, we had to go back and rethink about. So, July last year, we introduced a new version, enhanced version of Azure Migrate that takes some of these things into consideration. And as part of that, one of the challenges is the automation was happening with the workflows using Azure REST APIs.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so one of the big asks was, can we make this simpler?
Yep.
Right? I mean, can we not have to invoke an HTTP client or Fiddler or Postman or something to actually do this? And the answer, of course, is yes.
Yep.
So basically, we announced the availability of these new Azure PowerShell module, which basically helps you automate the migration process and further accelerate your cloud migration. So
Yep.
instead of calling RESTful endpoints, you've got these modules. There's some sample scripts available on GitHub, and it just kind of
I was actually just going to
it's a
open them
nice,
up. Here
yeah,
they
perfect,
are.
perfect.
And you
Yes,
can
it's
just kind
awesome.
of go on over there, and there's a whole bunch of additional information about how you can, take advantage of these things.
Love it. Love it, love it. So again, we're always striving to make things bigger, better, faster, stronger, cheaper, more secure, more reliable, more stable. All the architectural and design tenets you would expect, um, and just continue to make you, the customer, happy as you can be, and
Yep.
even hopefully delight you even more than you thought you could be delighted.
Yeah. Yeah. So Good stuff. So if you're doing Azure migration and you really want to
Yep.
speed that up and really make it easier, go check out the new PowerShell scripts. So, are we ready to move
All
on?
right. Yes. Let's see you flex those biceps.
Okay. Okay, let me do one thing real quick here.
Okay.
Um, I'm going to switch to this. Okay. Now, and then I'm going to also switch to, yeah, I want to go here first. I'm going to show people a
Okay.
screen. Okay, so everybody knows about the ARM API. The ARM API is how you request resources on Azure.
Yep.
I'm seeing the wrong screen. There we go. That's the one I want to show. And we have made available ARM templates, and everybody knows ARM templates are built on JSON. JSON is obviously a standard. It's just a way
Yep.
to make documents. It makes a lot of sense for us to have used JSON because ARM is a REST API. And what is the payload
Yep.
for a REST API? JSON.
JSON.
Right. So that made sense, and that was a great decision. No problem. But JSON is very verbose, and
Yes.
it's doesn't lead itself to any sort of thing like IntelliSense because it's just JSON.
Hmm.
So
Well, and if you're if you don't know, it's JavaScript object notation. So I mean, it is just JSON. I mean, I don't mean to de-emphasize all the work and everything about it. It is pretty cool, but at the end of the day, it's an object notation.
yeah, and that's all it is, and that's fine. So there is an opportunity for us to raise the level and make another language, if you will. And I'm actually scroll down here so you can't see it, but uh, and make a a higher level language for Azure, and we're doing that. Yeah, I guess it's a language. It's sort of a language.
It's a domain
It's a
specific
domain
language.
specific
Yeah.
language, yeah. And
Yep.
so it's called ARM. It's sorry, it's not called ARM. It's called Bicep. And Bicep, of course, is the play on Bicep. So it's a little
Yep.
bit. I mean, I can't believe it stuck. I think they were thinking it wouldn't stick, but it stuck. So it's called Bicep. And you can see here it's all open source, and you can see they're in version zero point 0.2 right now. 0.3 is going to be when we're kind of calling it production ready. But so right now it's still in preview, if you will. By the time we get to 0.3, it'll be supported by support, all that kind of stuff. So be ready for that. But I'm going to do a little short demo showing you how using Bicep can really add to your tool belt of creating templates. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to here. Okay, so the first thing to notice here, I've moved over to Visual Studio Code, and the first thing to notice is that the Bicep extension is now available in the marketplace for Visual Studio Code, and this is what downloads the language server. It's what lights everything up, so that's a requirement. So let's get started building some Bicep. So first thing let's do is let's create a new file. We'll call this main.bicep. And let's just declare a really simple storage account. Okay, so let's start by declaring a resource, and that's the keyword we'll use is resource. Resource, and we have to give it an identifier, so we'll call it STG for storage. And then you'll notice here that the next thing that pops up is a list of all of their resource providers in Azure, and we can filter storage. Let me get this right. Storage account. Okay, and you'll notice here it even shows me preview versions, and you can kind of take a look at these different versions. But I'm going to choose this latest one. You could choose an older one if you wanted to also. And then we're going to define this object. Okay, so now the first thing you'll notice is I get an error in this storage account, and it says that I'm missing some fields. And I can also bring up IntelliSense, and it notices right away what are the fields for a storage account. And you'll notice here that, for instance, as I scroll down here, for instance, this one right here, a kind, it's required. Location is required. Name is required. So I can get started creating these. So let's start with name. Now, the first thing to know about a name is that we have sort of a string concatenation syntax, and we can just call this. Actually, let's just do something simple. Let's just call it my storage. Okay, and then let's go to location, and let's make this equal to resource group dot dot location, which means it just inherits the location from the resource group that it's being deployed to. And then let's see here, what else are we missing? It says we're missing kind and skew. Okay, let's go to kind. Oops. Kind. Okay, and you'll notice here the first thing is that comes up is we get an enum. There's only a specific set of options for kind in a storage account. So blocks, a blob, block, file, and we're going to choose storage v2. So this means you don't have to memorize those at all. And then the last one is skew. Okay, and this one is also required. And it's also an object. And you'll notice we get a warning here saying, hey, I think that you're missing name. Wait, was it name? Yeah. So skew name, and we can pull those up. Once again, we get the same sort of list of enums, and we're just going to use standard LRS. And so now you'll notice here we have a full storage account, and it's declared. Now, I could, if I wanted to, go in here to properties and look at these things, and I could, bring up IntelliSense, and these are all of the different properties that I can put. So these are all of the right properties I have. But I'm just going to do this real simple. I'm going to keep this nice and simple. And the thing to notice here is that I'm going to go ahead and, some people call this transpile, but also compile. It's kind of hard to know what. But we're going to use the Bicep CLI to turn this into an ARM template. So here we go. Bicep build main.bicep. Okay, so it ran, and you'll notice it came out with main.json, and we can take a look at it. And here we go. Here is our ARM template that it generated for us, and it filled out the resources, type, API name, version, kind, skew. It's all right here, ready to go. Okay, so let's modify this just a little bit. Let's add a parameter. We all know about ARM template parameters, so let's use param. And we also have to give this an identifier, and we're going to call this prefix. All right. And we're going to make this, you'll notice it comes up with all of the different kinds of types. And we're just going to make that a string, and we're going to give it a default value of just blank. Okay. So that way you could provide a prefix if you wanted, or not if you didn't want to. It's totally up to you. And what we're going to do here is we're actually going to prefix this name, and we're going to use this syntax here where we can say prefix. And you'll notice here that I didn't need to identify this as a parameter. It just figures out what it is. And we should be able to go to bicep build. Actually, I can just hit up here. Bicep build main.bicep. And bring this up. And you'll notice now we have a parameter here. It has a default value. And you'll notice here that it actually did the string concatenation for us right there. That's awesome, right? So now, let's do one more thing here. I'm actually going to get rid of this here, and I'm going to change this to be, I don't know if anybody's used the unique string function in ARM. ARM has a function that can help you generate a unique string, and it can also take a seed. So let's use that. Let's use unique string function, and you'll notice here I have the function, and I can say I want this to use my resource group dot ID as the seed. That means that for every unique resource group, I'll get a different unique string. But for any one specific resource group, I will always get the same unique string. And so then we can do bicep build, and we can kind of see how this turns out. Go back to main.json, and you'll see here, now we have parameters prefix and unique string. So it does all that for us, which is awesome. Okay, let's see here. So you'll notice that we have been getting warnings and errors in Bicep. Just know that the language server that is in Visual Studio Code and the CLI, that's the same code. So in other words, if you don't get any errors in Visual Studio Code, you can feel confident that when you run Bicep, you will not get any errors because it is exactly the same code. So check this out. We also have this. You can kind of mess this up. Oops, can't do that. You can mess this up like this, and then we can just do code formatting. Oops, not like that. Like over here, like this. And so that's been added to Bicep. Let's see what else has been added. Let's see here. Let's try something else now. Let's go and let me, I'm going to show you one more thing here. We are going to, we'll just delete this. Okay. And then we're going to rename this to storage.bicep, and we're going to create a new file called main.bicep. All right. Now here's what we're going to do in main.bicep. We are going to generate. We're going to turn that into a module. And what a module is it's just a reusable piece of ARM code or Bicep code, and then we can reference it over and over again. So let's actually generate that now. So let's say module storage module, and then we just put the reference to the file. Oops, not that. This. Okay. And so now then the last thing we need to do is, you'll notice we get an error, and that is because we need to add a name. And this is the name for the nested deployment for those of you who know ARM well. And we can just call this, nested storage. Okay, so now we can bicep build main.bicep. And you'll notice here that we get an ARM template. Now it's starting to get pretty complicated. And so we have, here's our storage account, but it's a part of a nested deployment right here. Right? Okay. So let's go back to something. You'll remember that our storage bicep file had a parameter. We can actually declare that here. And we can say that the parameters are, and which one were they? I don't know. I'll look in IntelliSense. There it is. Prefix is equal to mark, right? And so this is really cool because now we know we can put the prefix in there. We know what it is. We know what the options are. But there's one more thing I want to show you about these module prefixes. So one of the things we can do is we can actually go here to this prefix, or excuse me, to this parameter, and actually do allowed. Oh, sorry. I think it's allowed. And then we can say Rick, Mark. Okay, there we go. And so now you'll notice we actually have a parameter with two options. And if we go over to main.bicep, you'll notice here, if I put in something that's not in the list, it throws me an error and says, hey, this is not in. You can only choose Rick or Mark. And so now I can go back and put this in as Mark. And sure enough, whoops. And sure enough, now I've got a parameter that's only allowed in the allowed list. So I think that hopefully that is useful. Oh, I've got one more thing I want to show you. Let's go into storage and let's make an output. So here's the output, and I'm going to call this blob endpoint, and it's a string, equals stg, right? Now remember, stg is the identifier for my storage account, and I can say properties dot oh, there it was right there, primary endpoints dot blob. And so you'll notice here, of course, int. If we put that as an int, it says, hey, whoa, hold on, this endpoint is this value is a string, so we can confidently throw an error in there. We can put it back to string and do that. So this gives us this ability here, gives us the ability to see all of the output parameters, or the readable parameters also in addition. And this is the new capability that's brought forward by Bicep. So, and we can actually even build this one more time. And we can go to main.json. And you can see here that our nested deployment now actually has an output. And it actually references over to the storage account, gets the values, prefix, everything that belongs in there. Good to go. Hopefully this is really exciting. It's exciting to me. I personally, for me, yeah, it's good enough now that using Bicep is better and easier than generating ARM templates. Actually, in the latest version, as far as like Point two did not have this, but point three is going to have a decompile where you can actually take an existing ARM template and decompile it in a Bicep.
Reverse engineer it.
Reverse
I like
engineer
it.
it. Yeah, that's right. And they're aiming at 80, 90% compatibility. So you'll decompile. It'll mostly be ready to go. You'll have to do some tweaking. So don't expect it to be perfect. Uh,
Now, one thing I think, Mark, is important to call out though. So how supported is this?
so right now, it's not supported.
Okay.
Not by CSS, not by our customer support.
Right.
However, but we're hoping people will try it and reach out. And if file
Yep.
issues on GitHub, you will get
Yep.
support there for sure. Because we want help, we want input from customers, we want input from everybody.
Absolutely.
Now, at point three, which is coming next year, at version point three, there will be customer support for Bicep.
Awesome.
Okay,
That's cool.
so we're talking about next year, February, March, something like that. There'll be a point three release, and you'll be able to get support from Microsoft on this product.
Wow.
Um,
So this is really interesting because when we first started talking about this a while back, right? A lot of the word on the street was internally, hey, this is a ways off yet, guys. It's experimental. It's not going to be supported for a long time. I'm guessing that you, the customer, have kind of persuaded them to accelerate and actually think
yep,
about, no, we need to make this supportable sooner rather than
yep,
later because getting enough feedback that there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's
Wow.
exciting and honestly, if you're developing a brand new project, you might take a look at Bicep. You as a customer, here's the other go do: download the marketplace, download the VS Code extension in the marketplace,
Yeah.
get the Bicep files off of GitHub, and try it out for a brand new
Kick the tires.
yeah, kick the tires
Exactly.
for a brand new project. You might be able to just use Bicep,
Yep.
but for a project that's existing, start thinking about how you might use modules. They're also working on public modules. So, in other words,
Oh,
you'll be able to reference a module directly on GitHub, something like that to start out with. So,
awesome.
there's a lot of really, really exciting stuff here. So, hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that was interesting to everybody. You know,
That's awesome.
yeah,
No, thanks for sharing that. That was great. It's come a long way since I played with it. Well, geez, it feels like forever, but it was probably only a couple months
yeah. It was just
ago.
a month or two ago that they were on the point one release.
Wow.
The decompile is available today if you go and get a
Okay.
recent build off of the GitHub Actions.
Gotcha.
If you go to the 2 point release in GitHub the release, you won't be there because the point two release doesn't have it. But if you go to the latest build, the nightly
Okay.
build, you can get the decompile,
It's
and it
in.
works. I tried it;
Wow.
it worked. So
That's crazy. When you said the release of the release, it sounded like we were
you know
having
what I
release
mean? Like
inception.
it's that technical term, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yes, very
okay,
technical.
great.
I love it.
Is that it?
That's awesome. That is it. I hate to say that's it because that was a lot, but wow, that was awesome, dude. So Mark, if anybody's got questions, like, hey, I meant to ask, or I'd love to ask Mark about,
Yep.
X with Bicep, whatever. How can they reach you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at mgarner, or you can feel free to email me. No problem. Email me mgarner@microsoft.com. Rick, what about you?
Excellent. I'm always monitoring the Azure Flash News Twitter feed, so you can hit us up at Azure Flash News on Twitter, or you can always email me directly at rick@microsoft.com.
That's right. That's right. Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody. We appreciate it so much. Don't forget, you can catch the show on YouTube. Please
Yep.
like and subscribe. We got over
Yep.
100 subscribers the other day, so that was kind of exciting.
Yes.
Um,
Very exciting.
and so now we're on the race to 200. We'll see who's going to be the 200th subscriber.
Love it.
And you can catch us on not Twitch. No, not doing Twitch, not yet. Thought about it.
iTunes,
iTunes,
Stitcher.
Stitcher, Google Play. If there's
Yep.
somewhere else, let us know. We're happy to kind of continue to syndicate elsewhere. So
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, per usual, we always thank you for tuning in and listening to what we have to say. And without you guys, we wouldn't be doing this. So thank you very much. We always look forward to broadcasting and doing these podcasts because it's a lot of fun. And Mark and I, well, I can't speak for Mark. I enjoy working with Mark, so it's good. It's good to take a little.
Rick
I
is,
won't say
I
break.
don't know.
Yeah, I know it can be sketchy at times, but it's good to actually reset a little bit every once in a while. So for that, I say thank you, Mark, and I say thank you to the audience.
Yep.
And we always look forward to chatting with you. Hopefully, same place, roughly. Well, hopefully we say same time, but things have gotten kind of chaotic with COVID. But until that next time, keep your finger on the sanitized keyboard and keep your head in the clouds.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.